So all this data we've got on the job finding rates, that comes from the CPS, or jobless claims that continue to be very high. It's the latest developments in a string of developments which have said no one is hiring. Even the mainstream media is picking up on this, going back to talking about stories from individual workers from their perspective, or at least former workers, how they cannot find a job, even though they've been looking very strenuously for a long time. Here's NBC News just from a couple weeks ago. Dan Hevia has been laid off before, but this time feels different. Hevia, who's 42 years old, a marketing and business development specialist based in the New York City area, has been out of work since the summertime. We keep coming back to that too. In a recent LinkedIn post, he claimed he has filled out more than 1,000 job applications with nothing to show for it. Quote, "If you had told me when I was laid off in June that I would approach 6 months without a job offer, I would laugh. But here it comes, and boy, does this job market humble you on a regular basis." In an interview with NBC News, Hevia said he holds out little hope for what the future brings for his career. "I'm continuing to apply with shaken confidence, if not totally broken," he said. And that's not the only one. You can find these all over the mainstream media. Like I said, the labor market that they all said was strong and resilient before the election, now they're starting to say, okay, it wasn't just a vibe session. It was all an illusion. That's where this hiring freeze has come from. In any recovery situation, we expect that employers will staff up their payrolls as much as possible, anticipating, well before it actually happens, anticipating a pickup in business. They need to get employees in the door, they need to get them trained, they need to get them ready to go so they can be productive once business picks up. And back in 21 and 22, really 21 when this really got started, that's what everyone said. Forget the pandemics, forget the lockdowns. Have you seen prices? They've gone zooming ahead. Everybody from politicians to central bankers to Warren Buffett said the economy was red hot in 21. Plus, given the pandemic restrictions and everything else, businesses had a harder time than normal in finding workers, which meant that they thought there was an even more pressing matter to find more workers than they actually needed. They did so because they weren't sure they could secure workers to begin with, but they also began to fear that they were going to miss out if they didn't. So on the whole, the U.S. employment market overstaffed. They got too many workers in, anticipating a recovery that never showed up. But unlike normal recessions or typical cyclical processes, it didn't reverse all at once. There was no sharp downturn. There was the initial technical recession in 2022, but that was just a modest slowdown. And every time when confronted with this disparity between expectations for a zooming economy and a slowing down in the nominal economy and a really bad real economy, every time when they were confronted with those possibilities and those realities, businesses didn't fire workers. They kept holding out hope that there would be a turnaround just over the horizon. So as it became more clear over the last couple of years that wasn't the case, rather than fire workers, still holding out hope, still hoarding workers, they stopped hiring. Because eventually you have to say, okay, we're waiting for a recovery that doesn't seem to happen. While we're still holding out hope, we're still optimistic, we just can't bring in any more workers. And this is not just one or two anecdotes that you see in the mainstream media now more recently. It's not just the hiring rate or the BLS statistics. You also get it from consumer confidence surveys. A big one, the Conference Board from a couple days ago. And the Conference Board's consumer confidence numbers had soared October and November, hopes over the election.